So, the Witcher 4 cinematic trailer dropped during the Games Awards to mostly general acclaim, although some people were looking at the Ciri in the trailer and raising an eyebrow or two because, yeah, in certain frames she definitely looks off. She's got that almost uncanny valley look that you see on certain uglified PC game protagonists these days, where you're looking at them and you're like, something isn't right here. And honestly, largely, I think it's because her face proportions look off. Like, her face looks too long. And this is largely because throughout almost the entire trailer, she never shuts her mouth. She's constantly got this half agape face on, as if she's some sort of mouth-breathing moron. Not a particularly flattering look, by and large, but hey, details. See, I don't actually mind it over much. The Ciri that we saw in the trailer is pretty much similar to the Ciri we've seen previously. Aged up a little bit, which I would certainly launch the argument that there was no need to, because, well, she's a video game character. Geralt hardly changed all that much over his years, and, I mean, at the end of the day, when you are looking at having beautiful, attractive characters, keeping them realistic is not necessarily, well, necessary. I mean, here's Conan, age 50. See the point? But the entire thing of changing out Geralt for Ciri, I don't actually particularly mind. See, my view on this is a bit more mixed, really. I'm not in the she's been uglified camp, nor am I in the she's entirely the same camp. I'm more, how do I put this? The transition to Ciri as a main character, let's begin there, shall we? That makes sense, because they were very much so setting her up as the successor to Geralt. And as far as passing the torch style nonsense goes, it was amongst the better ones. Considering the minuscule sliver of justification usually used in these various universes, comic books in particular, to pass the torch from one character to another, this, with the whole game building it up where you play a Ciri and so on, was a pretty good torch passing, honestly. And therefore moving it on over to her makes entire sense in this one. Now, there is still, of course, the problem that do people really want to play a Witcher game without Geralt? How intrinsically linked is he to the Witcher series? Perhaps it would have been better to name it something else but put it in the Witcher universe, but then of course you risk losing brand recognition, and CD Projekt Red kind of needs that brand recognition right now, as Cyberpunk, although having recovered quite beautifully, honestly, it left quite a massive dent in the company's public profile, shall we say, not to mention their relationship with their investors, so I can see why they would want to retain the brand recognition of the original Witcher series, even if it might turn off some people in the long run. Now, when it comes to her design, though, I think one of the bigger reasons why people are looking at it and going, is partially the fact that it's a cinematic trailer, which means that they've overdone the detail a little bit. They've spent a little bit too much time on her face, on the little things, and it's kind of entered into the realm of a sort of pseudo kind of uncanny valley, where her nose seems a little bit too broad, and they've kind of toned down the eye makeup a little bit, making her feel a little bit less done up. Her lips are this kind of slightly weirdest shape. She's also shot in a lot of non-flattering angles, and the aforementioned constantly like this problem as well. And even more so, there was a recent Ciri DLC from a game called Naraka Blade Point, I think it was, where they had a genuinely super cute Ciri model where she looks great, where they've done the exact opposite. Like, they've narrowed down the nose a little bit, they've English is a difficult language, as it turns out. Overdone, even more so, the eye makeup. They've made her look incredibly feminine, as is what they usually do in Asia, surprisingly enough. And so by comparison, people now look at the prettified, beautified, cutified version of Ciri, which released rather unfortunately for The Witcher, I suppose, mere days before the cinematic trailer, and then they look at the trailer version and go, hold on, what happened here? Where, in reality, the Ciri in the cinematic trailer is pretty damn close to the original. Again, they've definitely lengthened her face a little bit, done a few touches here and there that seem ill-placed, but I definitely would not go so far as to say that this is an uglification of the character. It's mostly just the positions of the camera and the lighting and so on. Now, bearing in mind as well, this is the cinematic trailer, so her in-game character is yet to be revealed, which is hopefully not going to have the same uncanny valley weirdness to it as the cinematic variant. Now, there comes the big question too, right? What are they gonna do with this title? So, CD Projekt Red is a rather progressive company, and they jumped on the progressive bandwagon rather late, in fact. Whereas a lot of companies right now are beginning to emerge from the fog of wokeism, CD Projekt Red only started barreling into it a few years ago, and they are very unlikely to have received the stick necessary to withdraw from it anytime soon. In fact, they are even now carrying out, well, blatantly discriminatory practices, like their Girls in Games award thingy-bob, where they give stipends and preferential access to their crew, as in, they give, what was it? So, the Girls in Games, or Girls Games or whatever, is a stipend created by CD Projekt Red, where they go looking for specifically female up-and-coming games creators, as in education, and they give them a stipend, so an amount of money, and they also give them access to the Witcher studio, CD Projekt Red, to come in and see how they work and so on, and network and build connections. This is obvious favoritism, and it is obviously sexist, as you are awarding this to only one gender. Now, in most of Europe, this would be strictly illegal, but I am presuming in Poland it is not. Otherwise, I'd assume somebody would have acted out against it by now. So, CD Projekt Red is definitely not an anti-woke corporation by any stretch of the imagination. So there is a lot of suspicions going around that with CD Projekt Red's new project, Witcher 4, they might have headed in an even more progressive direction. One is getting rid of Geralt, which I think they'd set up adequately, and replacing him with Ciri, which I also think they set up adequately, so no real problems there. But what then will they do with that character? Will they take her in a progressive direction? Will they take her in a wokest, strong female girl boss rising up against the patriarchy direction? Well, the trailer mildly hinted at that, but not so much as to really be a point to grab onto, where you have a village that sacrifices a young girl to the demon in the forest, and Ciri goes in like, no, the gods didn't choose her as a sacrifice, you did, you bad person, you! And then she goes and tries to save her, and fails. Again, that's pretty much just the Witcher storyline as far as I'm aware, so it's really difficult to draw too much in the way of conclusions from that, but as we have learned so many times over the years, where there is smoke, there is very often a little bit of wokest fire as well. Now, we can also then go back a little bit in time to their previous project, like Cyberpunk. Was Cyberpunk progressive, overtly woke? I would say no, not really. There were a couple of mild nods here and there, like, I believe there was a trans flag or something on a pickup truck during one of the side storylines, but again, it's like, I don't really care. It's so minuscule that it doesn't really bother me at that point. And in fact, the sort of representation that is just like, oh hey, there's a sticker over there, but I'm not going to mention it, it's kind of the representation I would prefer, frankly. Oh yeah, it's there, but we're not going to shove it in your face. I actually like that. Especially half a lot more than the alternative. So, I would say it is still far too early to tell, and I do understand very much so why a few people are already looking at it and getting a little bit skeptical. After all, we lose nothing from being wary. There is absolutely no cost to any of us, even if you are a long-time Witcher fan. If you look at it and you're like, maybe I'll wait for a review, you know? Nothing is lost. Whereas if you delve headfirst into it, the nothing is lost argument gets a little bit more diffuse there, particularly in this day and age of 3-day early releases, although we will talk about that on the ArchCast this weekend too, as the Indiana Jones game is an interesting little data point, as apparently the, Great Circle or something, is apparently a fairly decent video game, and yet it also appears to have completely and utterly flopped in sales numbers, and I attribute that largely to a general fear of it being progressive. Not so much because of its own actions, although certainly some of that as well, but more due to the overall feel that has kind of settled onto the Indiana Jones franchise ever since the Dial of Destiny. But we'll get into that more tomorrow. For now, I have been Arch. Please do tell me what you think in the comment section down below about the Witcher trailer, as I'd like to get a bit more of a wider feedback on this, as on Twitter at least, where I had commented on this originally, it seemed pretty universal, honestly. And I do hope to see you all again soon, of course. Till then, have a good day.